Exclusive contract novel from Feilu Novel Network. Let you write about the virgin bitch, and you write about the three-body problem on site. Ye Chen traveled through parallel worlds and found himself participating in a live creative variety show. Contestants need to create live film and television scripts that can generate real-time visuals using brain VR devices based on the propositions given by the program team. So, in the preliminary round, after obtaining the proposition, disaster, I saw other contestants still making up outdated stories about the earthquake and tsunami that occurred in Fei Lu. However, Ye Chen decided to broaden the horizons of the program team and directly wrote about the sun exploding in front of everyone. At first, the audience thought it was just a mediocre individual heroism film that relied on one person to save the world. But when everyone heard the line, "Those over 50 years old are out," the whole room was in a daze, and then everyone burst into tears. Subsequently, in order to increase the difficulty for Ye Chen, who was killing the entire audience, the production team specially came up with a very obscure proposition called Our Lady. I thought I could stump Ye Chen. But Ye Chen smiled slightly and wrote, "Hey, my name is Cheng Xin. These are my memories, some past stories about the earth." Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Script Creation Competition. You are listening at Novel FUL.audio. Chapter 1 Script Creation Competition. Parallel world, all departments are ready. Hosts microphone dress check, judges seated. Prepare the main live broadcast route and adjust the camera focus. Opening countdown, 3, 2. Opening. With the order of the backstage director. In the CCTV number 1 broadcasting hall, thousands of staff members simultaneously entered a busy but orderly working state. And as the program hosts Xiao Sa and Bing Bing waited on stage one after another, they began their passionate speeches and began their opening remarks. The chief director finally breathed a sigh of relief, took off his commanding earphones, handed over the on.site command to the deputy director, and looked at dozens of surveillance cameras in front of him, taking a deep breath. How are the contestants preparing? What about that kid who suddenly fainted just now? When asked by the chief director, the executive director in charge of athlete work replied, "Wake up, pour 2 bottles of wind oil essence in one breath, it will wash your face in the bathroom." Upon hearing this, the chief director calmed down and nodded. "It's okay. This is a live broadcast program even more popular than the Spring Festival Gala, watched by billions of people around the world, and there must be no problems." Understood. Meanwhile, in the backstage bathroom, the slightly cool water patted on his face, making Ye Chen, who had a strong scent of wind oil essence in his mouth, wake up again. Looking up at his handsome face in the mirror in front of him, Ye Chen couldn't help but let out a bitter smile. Time travel is time travel. I will participate in a live creative program that attracts hundreds of millions of viewers nationwide as soon as I arrive. And it's still the 1 in 10, the most fiercely competitive finals venue. I wasn't a screenwriter in my past life, so I went straight to the finals right from the beginning. It's obvious that the pace is going to be cool. Slightly furrowing his brow, he picked up a handful of cold water with his hand again, washing away the scent of Feng Yujing that filled his mouth. Ye Chen turned his head and looked at the promotional poster posted at the entrance of the bathroom. The Creator program is a creative variety show initiated by CCTV and collaborated with world.known film producers such as Hollywood Abroad. The program will first select several young screenwriters from major film and television colleges with top-notch abilities in all aspects. These screenwriters will be under the spotlight of live broadcasts from audiences across the country. Based on the theme proposition given by the on.site judges, create a film and television script on.site, and engage in a Jedi escape between screenwriters. And ultimately, the champion athlete who is most favored by the audience and judges. I will directly qualify for promotion and represent my country in the global finals, competing head-on with established Western film and television leaders. It can be said that this is equivalent to an Olympics in the film and television industry. If he can win the championship, Ye Chen is qualified to represent the dragon country. At this moment, I was staring at the promotional poster and lost in thought. The door was suddenly pushed open, and the executive director in charge of the contestants' work pushed the door in and nodded at Ye Chen, saying, "Get ready to go on stage. Are you okay? Are you sure you're sober? Do you want another bottle of wind oil essence to refresh you?" As he spoke, Ye Chen quickly waved his hand and refused to say that he had no problem as he pretended to take out Feng Yujing from his bag. Upon seeing the situation, the executive director nodded. As they walked towards the contestants' workshop with Ye Chen, they pinched the microphone and whispered, "I'll give you a sneak peek and give you feedback based on the current audience data. Your expectations are among the top-ranked contestants, partly because of your previous good results, but more often because of your appearance. Many people give points without thinking. However, after all, this is a screenwriting competition and we rely on our pens to make a living. Face alone is not enough. Do you understand what I mean?" After speaking, the director stopped at the door of a room marked with the number 10 and said to Ye Chen, holding the doorknob in one hand, "This is your exclusive studio, where you will be conducting the entire screenwriting work without any distractions. Be careful, there are 8 cameras inside, shooting from all angles without dead angles. Don't make any strange movements. Moreover, this is a national promotion competition, and if you win, you can advance to the global finals, so there are also many individuals watching from abroad." As he spoke, the executive director put on a serious expression and forcefully stuffed a bottle of Feng Yujing into Ye Chen's hand, solemnly saying, "If you enter this door, it represents the image of the country to some extent. Pay attention to being dignified and steady. Come on." After speaking, the director pushed the door open and gave way, gesturing for Ye Chen to enter, while reporting through the microphone. The 10th contestant enters the arena, and all contestants are ready. The live broadcast will be synchronized in 5 minutes. On the other side, inside the CCTV lobby. Radio and Television Station, 2023 Creator Competition. After multiple rounds of selection, the top 10 contestants from across the country stood out and officially gathered. This is the highest standard authoritative creative competition in the Dragon Country film and television industry. It is also a youthful arena where the dreams of the new generation of screenwriters bloom. 10 in 1 format, today. We will select the most shining champion among these 10 top young screenwriters in the country. On the main stage, the host Xiao Sa passionately and elegantly introduced the competition rules. Then, the camera turned and he aimed at the judges to introduce. The guest reviewers for this competition are famous screenwriters for famous works such as Let Bullets Fly, and The Devils Are Coming, Professor Shuping. Representative work Ambush from 10 Sides, as well as director Zhang Yimou, the chief director of the opening ceremony of the 2008 Olympic Games. Chen Daoming, a national first-class actor representing outstanding works such as Kangxi Dynasty and Heroes. The only Chinese international superstar to receive an Oscar for lifetime achievement, teacher Cheng Long. And a public judging panel composed of 100 well-known domestic screenwriters and directors on site. They will provide ratings and suggestions during the contestants' creative process, helping them compete for the championship. In the contestants' workshop, I watched the live footage projected on the monitor in front of me. Sitting on the sofa, Ye Chen felt his heart pounding wildly. Good guy. Undoubtedly, it is the highest standard variety show in the country. Just the 4 people on the judging panel alone are big shots who can shoulder a banner in the film and television industry. Not to mention the 100-member judging panel in the audience. Li Yunlong, Silly Pillar, Lu Huaqiang, Chao Chao, Bai Zhantong, Wolf Warrior at a glance. Almost all the shots captured were well-known actors in China who could easily name themselves by looking at their faces. This is a variety show. It's not the award ceremony for any party. In her heart, Ye Chen whispered to herself, controlling her face and trying not to appear too surprised. Meanwhile, while the camera had not yet started live streaming, Ye Chen seized the opportunity to observe the studio he was in. The room is not large, only over 30 square meters, with simple layout. Several high-definition cameras are installed in all 4 directions, and only a computer, a whiteboard for writing, and a sofa for resting are placed in one corner of the wall. In the middle of the room, there is a square machine that is over half a person tall, and a device similar to VR glasses is also placed on the top cover of the machine. Upon seeing the device, Ye Chen was momentarily stunned. After the relevant memories from his predecessor flooded into his brain again, he suddenly blurted out a sentence. Using VR brain devices, directly outline film and television images in your mind, achieving what you think is what you see. What kind of screenwriting competition is this? It's just one person completing all the work of a director, screenwriter, and actor, using their brains to shoot a movie on site. Isn't this beyond the scope? At this moment, just as Ye Chen looked at the VR device in front of him in shock, he thought to himself that he was about to end it. Ding! The God of Story system is activated. Memory backtracking completed. The host can choose any memory to redo the screen. 2 minutes later, when the strange sound in the brain ended, the camera in the room was also synchronously starting the live broadcast the next second. Ye Chen snorted and chuckled lightly, exuding a confident demeanor on his face. Chapter 2. Proposition, Disaster. You are listening at Novel FUL.audio. Chapter 2. Proposition, Disaster. The next second when the live streaming camera in front of you is synchronized. Ye Chen also fully understands his own system. The system function is very simple. When Ye Chen uses his brain to create, the system will automatically collect audience reviews and popularity values, which can be used to unlock more functions. As a first-time binding, Ye Chen will receive a full-level system experience qualification. This means that whether it's writing a script or directly using his brain to outline special effects, Ye Chen can perfectly replicate the memories of his past life. In this parallel world, although it is already 2023, technology is also more advanced than in the past. But most of the high-rated movies I have watched in my past life have not been made yet, so I can use them directly. If you choose the right theme, you can achieve the goal of winning the championship with just one hit. When the competition is won, the system can also be upgraded based on the positive feedback from the audience, and even if you enter the global finals, you are not afraid. Steady. With a perfect sound in her heart, Ye Chen knew that she had entered the live broadcast scene when she saw the faint red light emitted by the camera in front of her. After stabilizing his mind and controlling his expression, Ye Chen nodded solemnly as the host Bing Bing introduced him. At the same time, barrage comments from live streaming viewers also appeared on the other side of the monitor in front of me. In just 5 minutes of airing, this program has already attracted millions of viewers, and the number of likes has exceeded 100 million. It is estimated that by the start of the main competition, audience data may surge like mountains and seas. No wonder this is even more popular than the Spring Festival Gala. With such high-tech competitions dominated by big shots, who would want to watch those fake dumpling smashes? Thinking to myself, watching the feedback from the scene, I heard the host start introducing the topic. Ye Chen sat back on the sofa, began to brew emotions and listen to the rules, eager to try the VR brain machine used for creation in front of him. Okay, the 10 contestants are each ready. Next, we will announce the theme proposition of this game. Let's invite teacher Cheng to announce for us. On stage, the host with a smile on his icy face elegantly gestured to the judges. Immediately, the audience applauded and the camera turned. I saw Cheng, dressed in a black tang suit, steadily pick up an envelope placed in front of him, open it and take a look, then show the proposition written in both Chinese and English on the envelope to the camera. The theme proposition of this finals is disaster. Upon hearing this, I saw the proposition displayed on the envelope. There was a 2-second silence on the scene, followed by the whispering of 100 judges. On the contestant studio side, the 10 contestants also had surprised and happy expressions on their faces when they saw the proposition. Sleeping in the slot, the finals, are you doing this kind of proposition? Why are you playing? Yeah, disasters are just various mountain floods and earthquakes. What's so good to take pictures of? I haven't gone abroad on a global scale. What particularly outstanding disaster movies are there? Who chose this theme? Isn't historical suspense good? Don't make such a fuss, this is a topic jointly decided by the professional judges, and there must be their considerations. Wanlu, the third contestant I like, specializes in love themes. How should he write about it? We can't start dating in the apocalypse, can we? For a moment, after seeing the proposition, viewers across the country who watched the live broadcast also expressed their opinions. After the scene gradually quieted down, the national first-class screenwriter Xu Ping picked up the microphone and introduced the reasons for choosing the topic. Disaster is a very common theme in film and television works. The upper limit of this genre is very high, and the lower limit is also very low. A sufficiently professional screenwriter often needs to strike the best balance between the two. It's like a bowl of egg-fried rice. Everyone can cook and eat it. But to truly achieve perfection, this kind of simple and difficult subject matter is actually the most challenging test of athletes' abilities. After Xu Ping finished speaking with a smile, Chen Daoming beside him continued to say, "Yes, we have also studied these 10 contestants and know that none of them are good at this, which is why we need to suddenly test them with a surprise attack. As a screenwriter, if something happens at home in the morning and you are asked to write a comedy in the afternoon, you need to maintain a calm mindset and write it out, otherwise it won't be considered professional." After speaking, Chen Daoming put down the microphone and handed over the hosting rights to Xiao Sa. "Okay, thank you all teachers. The introduction of the topic is completed. So next, the 2023 Creator Competition officially begins. Let's look forward to the performance of all the contestants." After Xiao Sa finished speaking, the director immediately began to switch the live broadcast camera. In the exclusive studios of each contestant, the audience can see that the contestants have already begun to bury their heads in contemplation. Obviously, this theme did not meet their expectations. Some frowned so hard that they could hold on to it, but others confidently began writing the plot outline. Disaster. Where is this proposition? It's just my own disaster. Am I someone who specializes in comedy and writes about disasters? Is it possible to make a wave of dumplings before the team's demise? Alien invasion should be considered a disaster, right? Perhaps mechanical armor is worth watching against the Zerg army. Come on, Zhang Wei, you can do it. You have reached the finals, you can do it. For a moment, as the guide kept switching between shots. Seeing almost all the contestants with unprepared expressions of confusion, the audience who had previously felt strange about the disaster proposition became interested. Indeed, as Chen Daoming said, unprepared matches are the best to watch. And this is the finals of the Dragon Country division, the champion will directly confront the Hollywood screenwriters. How can we play against foreigners without selecting a player who has full abilities in all aspects? At this point, just as the audience and the 100-member jury were both contemplating the contestant's screen, the director cut the camera to workshop 10 and saw that Ye Chen was not as conflicted as other contestants. On the contrary, Ye Chen had already picked up the VR computer and flipped around, as if he was ready to take action. Is this the beginning? So confident. Don't even write the plot timeline or something on the computer first. Player 10, graduated from China Academy of Film, has good grades, but his creative ability is not the strongest among these 10 people. Previously, he specialized in suspense and action types. I didn't find any special research on disaster films, otherwise we wouldn't have chosen this topic for him to eat. Watching Ye Chen enter the working state faster than other contestants. The four teachers in the judging panel exchanged a glance, and a hint of unhappiness quietly appeared on their faces. Not hesitating to raise your hand in an unfamiliar field can only lead to two outcomes. Either one can enter the soul at once, or just get lost. There will be no steady development. It is obvious that the four teachers who have studied Ye Chen's previous resume are not very attractive to him, and they feel that this young man is a bit impatient. And at this moment, just as the anchor had locked the main camera on Ye Chen, preparing to capture some interesting scenes where he might go wrong, I saw Ye Chen suddenly put down his VR device and walk straight to the camera, knocking and saying, "Can someone give me an electric guitar? I need to write a piece of music before the official start." Chapter 3. Wandering Earth. You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 3. Wandering Earth. Directly compose the music. Isn't this nonsense? Seeing that Ye Chen had not even written the most basic plot outline, he directly applied for equipment to compose the theme song. The 100-member jury immediately began to discuss, and many professional actors and screenwriters had doubts and puzzled expressions on their faces. As a professional director who has led the 2008 Olympic Games, Lao Jizi unabashedly picked up the microphone and said, "Film and television is an art that combines painting and sound. A good theme song that can run through the entire movie is particularly important, as it can achieve twice the result with half the effort. As a professional screenwriter with various abilities, using music to enhance audience emotions is also a compulsory course. While creating works, the score can also be considered, and in this regard, contestant number 10 is worthy of praise." But as Lao Gizi spoke, the conversation suddenly changed and he pointed to Ye Chen on the screen. Draw sound first, then sound. He doesn't mention the main plot. He hasn't even created the concept map yet, so he writes the music directly. Is this a bit of putting the cart before the horse, causing the final image to be wrapped in music and unable to be flexibly modified? So I think contestant number 10 is a bit impatient and lacks consideration, which may lead to some catastrophic consequences. However, according to the competition rules, he does have this permission. Let's see how he handles it. After speaking, old strategist put down the microphone, shook his head slightly, and a hint of disappointment appeared on his face without concealment. Upon hearing this, the other three also nodded in agreement with Lao Gizi's statement. Okay, thank you for Director Imo's evaluation. After Lao Gizi finished speaking, Xiao Sa took over the conversation and nodded to indicate to the director's office. The requirements of contestant number 10 comply with the competition rules. Immediately, Ye Chen received a calibrated electric guitar. At the same time, the director's office also sent other sound effects related recording keyboards and other mixing equipment into the room. The basic equipment is all here, it should meet your requirements. If there are any other questions, we have a professional sound effects team available to assist at any time. With the equipment provided, the directors left the room without much disturbance. Immediately, Ye Chen picked up the guitar, plucked the strings, and hummed for a few seconds, playing electronic sounds similar to those at the beginning of the Pacific Rim, under the unknown attention of the audience and judges. Subsequently, Ye Chen, who remembered this tone, turned around and wrote on the whiteboard with a pen. Space elevator, one mirror to the end, gradually increasing pitch, allowing the audience to see the sound. After finishing writing, Ye Chen put down his guitar, picked up the VR computer in front of him and put it on his head. He sat back on the sofa, closed his eyes, and prepared to create. Disaster. At the moment of seeing this proposition, Ye Chen immediately thought of an epic domestic film that left a deep impression on him. Wandering Earth 2. As a work that can leave a name in the history of domestic films. Little Breakball 2 is undoubtedly the most suitable match to participate in. Large scenes such as space elevators, moon explosions, and planetary engine startups are sure to meet the audience's visual requirements for special effects. Moreover, the story of Little Breakball 2 not only fits well with the disaster proposition. It can also elevate the concept to the height of only responsibility exists in the face of disasters. The most important thing is that this is the final venue, which means Ye Chen only has one chance to enter the soul with one shot. The story of wandering the earth is precisely in line with the taste of the most Chinese people. This is also why Ye Chen immediately requested the director's office to provide music equipment after making a decision. If you want to play, play big. As the opening highlight, the scene of the space elevator, where each scene is captured one by one, will undoubtedly leave a deep impression on all viewers. After obtaining the qualification to experience the full level system, the high-burning background music accompanied the elevator as it soared. Ye Chen must manually play it on site. At that time, under the dual bombardment of audio and visual, there is no fear that the audience will not be able to ignite. Wearing the VR brain machine and adjusting the posture, Ye Chen, who closed his eyes, immediately felt a faint electric current coming from the temples on both sides, indicating that the brain-machine device had started to operate. At the same time, Ye Chen also mobilized the performance function of the system, so that he could use his extremely professional performance ability to personally perform some important plots. 2 seconds later, the backstage of the director's office. Upon receiving the VR wireless signal from Studio 10, the director promptly switched the camera and prepared to simultaneously project the imagined image in Ye Chen's mind onto the main stage in the hall. Suddenly, the scene fell silent. Everyone was staring closely at the main screen, wanting to see what kind of work this contestant who appeared on the screen without even writing a script could do. Similarly, the other 9 contestants who were still in the preparation stage also put down their pens and looked at the screen with interest, trying to find inspiration from Ye Chen. But what puzzled everyone was. I waited for 10 seconds, except for the occasional quicksand sound in my ear. The main screen was pitch black with no images appearing. And just as the director was about to lose patience with Ye Chen and prepare to cut off his brain signals, suddenly, I saw the live broadcast footage from the studio. Ye Chen, who was originally sitting on the sofa, stood up, opened his eyes, and said to the camera. Humans are essentially a bunch of electronic signals. All our cognition, memory, emotions, and pain about this world are just signals simulated by the brain. The body is fragile, making people sick, aging, dying, and even his mother depressed. But digital humanity can live forever. Ye Chen's sudden words, combined with his subtle facial expressions, left most people on the scene feeling bewildered and unsure of what the person was doing. Even the director in charge of switching shots in the background was stunned and unsure whether to cut off the shots. At the judging panel, the 4 knowledgeable teachers were momentarily stunned, followed by a bright moment in front of them, all raising their hands to signal the silence of the scene. Although there were no visuals, he had already started creating stories and had already acted on actors. What he just said was clearly a line. And he's still performing synchronously. Do you want to perform it yourself before constructing the scene, in order to find the feeling? As we were discussing, we saw Ye Chen walking back and forth in the room, constantly scratching his ears and cheeks with a very impatient expression. At the same time, there was a slight change in Ye Chen's expression on his face. With a sullen tone, he stared at the camera and said, "This is continuing human civilization and creating a new world. I don't understand why they want to ban this technology. Why? What does the survival of humanity in 100 years have to do with me?" Chapter 4. Is one person both a production team? You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 4. Is one person both a production team? The survival of humanity in 100 years. It's good to have a direct opening question. Seeing Ye Chen narrate the opening line with a very serious expression. The four judges suddenly became interested and exchanged glances, silently praising Ye Chen's performance. And, seeing some members of the 100-member judging panel puzzled, Teacher Shuping picked up the microphone and explained. When creating, screenwriters first need to immerse themselves in the story in order to impress the audience. Writers know that sometimes when you step into a character and write your lines, you can't help but dance and dance, just like he does now. Chen Daoming also nodded and said. Yes, professional actors also need to inject emotions when memorizing lines. As a screenwriter, I naturally need to consider this when writing my lines. So let's look at contestant number 10, although he hasn't released any footage yet. But we can know that he has entered a state of readiness to enter the play. So I'm looking forward to his performance on the spot in the future. Suddenly, just as all four judges praised Ye Chen's oral performance, on the main screen of the hall, only a crow's hissing suddenly sounded. Accompanied by a hissing, the pitch-black center of the screen gradually lit up. I saw a black crow with dust on its wings appearing in the picture, stepping on a dilapidated roadside surveillance probe. As the camera kept moving backwards, a dilapidated city scene that seemed to have experienced the ravages of war immediately appeared. At this point, on the backstage of the director's office. Seeing that Studio 10 had already sent real-time video footage generated by a brain computer, the director had intended to directly fix the footage onto the main screen. But at the same time, the director also found that Ye Chen, who was staying in the studio, was still immersed in a state of immersion. Does he want to act on his own while simultaneously conceptualizing the scene? Similar to the kind of motion capture used in 3D animation, this one is a live action, while the other is synchronized with the footage. You have to think of lines and pictures, performed synchronously, and consider the position of supporting role. 8-core operation, one person is both a crew member and has strong brain power. Just now, I really only infused him with wind oil essence and didn't give him any medication. Bully. With a nod of admiration, the director simply cut the main screen of the hall into two parts, left and right. Project real-time film and television footage along with live footage from the studio. Then the audience saw a scene, the first dual-screen broadcast since the start of the program. This made the judges also slightly look up and nod to themselves. Let me tell you, before this place, people didn't carry guns, it's just as safe as in China. You didn't make it to the good time, this street is called Africa's Little Northeast, and the night market is always good. In the film and television footage, the audience first sees two soldiers wearing white combat uniforms and holding rifles walking slowly in the dilapidated streets. At the same time, in another live broadcast shot, the audience can also see Ye Chen still performing synchronously in the studio. And what makes the audience feel grounded the most is Ye Chen spoke with an authentic northeastern accent. Then, as the camera slowly moved up, the faces of the two soldiers were displayed, and the character names displayed in cursive subtitles were seen. The 100-member judging panel suddenly burst into laughter. Isn't this Wolf Warrior? His name is Lu Peiqiang, and he's the protagonist. And Bai Zhantong. His name is Zhang Peng, why is he so fat? This vernacular is authentic. When performing synchronously, you can still imagine the visuals. You can't even write the plot outline and just go straight up. This guy is so tough, he's on drugs, isn't he so capable of making up? For a moment, the audience who finally saw the film and television footage became interested and issued interactive barrage. On the side of the judging panel, Wu Jing and Sha Yi were stunned when they saw their own faces appearing on the camera, and then they laughed with great interest. Especially Sha Yi, who still maintains a slim figure, saw herself in the picture so fat that she couldn't even see her neck. She grinned and touched her cheeks. As the highest standard professional competition in the country, according to the rules, participating screenwriters have the authority to borrow face models. As long as it is a domestic actor, if the screenwriter feels that this person can play a role in the drama, they can use it directly without application. After all, screenwriters are also human beings, and no matter how strong their brains are, they still need to draw inspiration from reality. They cannot create faces out of thin air. Of course, this permission is limited to competitions only, and if you want to actually shoot and land the movie in the future, you will need to negotiate separately. In the picture. The conditions are poor now, so I can't eat barbecue anyway. The fried mosquito cake from the past. Zhang Peng, wearing sunglasses, smashed his mouth and gestured skillfully, returning to his taste. So thick. 500,000 mosquitoes make a cake, TSK, fragrant. As he was speaking, he heard a piercing sound from the sky. Moving the camera up, Zhang Peng and his companions quickly raised their weapons and saw two huge quadcopters flying rapidly in the air, so they relaxed their vigilance. It's okay, it's okay. Our own aircraft is patrolling. After Zhang Peng finished speaking, he looked around the dilapidated streets and shook his head with regret. Taking out a handful of yellow paper money from his pocket, he crouched down in front of the wreckage of a crashed helicopter and said, "That's it, your parents are gone. Brother, sister.in.law, I brought Peiqiang to see you guys. This child is promising, I will definitely take good care of him." Seeing Zhang Peng burning paper to pay his respects in such an environment in the picture. At the judging panel, director Shuping's heart trembled faintly. Disaster proposition, war environment, high-tech aircraft, traditional rituals. This scene is very rich in composition. Especially it is very down-to-earth because Chinese people have had such customs since ancient times. This kind of opening scene can easily evoke genuine emotions in the audience. This is a story written for us Chinese people to read, I'm sure. It's a bit interesting, really a bit interesting. After flipping through the evaluation, Director Shuping couldn't help but sit up straight and watch carefully with his eyes slightly wide open. On the judging panel side, seeing the experienced teacher Shuping give such praise after only a few seconds of reading, some business tycoons as sponsors also became interested. Just now, some unmanned aerial vehicles flew over in the picture. If this movie can ultimately win the championship and decide to be filmed, may we in DJI sponsor an advertisement or create a real one. Upon hearing this, the person in charge of Northern Industry also nodded and whispered. Did you see those two people wearing combat uniforms? They look like Air Force anti-G suits, and there's that rifle. This is the strength of our Northern Industry, we have taken care of it. For a moment, the big shots in charge of commercial investment all paid attention to Ye Chen. Some quick-moving individuals have even started drafting investment plans. Chapter 5. His mother. I thought I leaked the secret. You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 5. His mother. I thought I leaked the secret, burning paper money into ashes in silence. The judges suddenly noticed that during the process, the background sound was mixed with the sound of some shells bombing in real time. Add the combat attire of these two people at this time. A non-peaceful theater scene is presented to the audience. This has aroused a strong interest in Ye Chen's story among non-film and television professional investors and audiences. Soon, after the two people finished their sacrifice. At this moment, the dividing mirror flashed, and Liu Peiqiang stood up. A warm orange-red sunlight unique to dusk slanted across his face. Looking at the sun, Liu Peiqiang took off his sunglasses and began with a complex expression in his eyes. Master, do you think there will really be a solar crisis? Upon hearing this, Zhang Peng did not respond, but instead said, I can be blind. Liu Peiqiang exclaimed and hurriedly put on his sunglasses again. Upon seeing this scene, teacher Chen Daoming suddenly hissed and took a breath, turning his head to look at Xu Ping. Their eyes were full of praise. This dialogue and character design are done very well, and it's very human-like, Chen Daoming explained with a microphone. In the teacher-student relationship, if the apprentice is foolish and asks a question, the master will first blame the apprentice instead of rushing to explain the phrase solar crisis to the audience, which is enough to react like a normal person should. From here, it can be seen that contestant Ye Chen indeed has some proficiency in line research. The more he said it, the more Chen Daoming liked Ye Chen, and when praising him, he no longer used the player's ID but called him by name. However, the old strategist holding his arm beside him now frowned slightly. For some reason, this is clearly the final venue for 10 people. But since Ye Chen began to conceptualize the scene, the judges and the 3 of them have been highly appreciative of him. The directors seem to only focus on him, and now they have directly locked the camera in. If this continues, the other 9 contestants may as well withdraw directly from the competition. However, although he thought so in his heart, old strategist still controlled his expression. After all, Ye Chen has done a good job so far, and the other 9 contestants have not yet produced better works. Let's see how he performs. We need to find a way to find fault and not let him stand out alone. Calculating, old strategist squinted his eyes slightly and stared at the screen, pondering to find some flaws. In the picture. Ah. Zhang Peng let out a long sigh and instructed Lu Peiqiang to put on his sunglasses, looking at the dilapidated city around him. Crisis, must be there, this has all turned out like this. At this moment, the camera flashed and the image slowly rose, gathering the entire city into the lens. The next second, a huge Chinese and English annotation appeared in the screen. 34 years left until the solar helium flash, see the words specially annotated in bright red. The judges felt a thump in their hearts, and teacher Chenglong's eyebrows twisted into knots. Xu Ping also hinted in his heart that it was not good. The plot was leaked directly. A long period of 34 years. No, Ye Chen handled this very poorly. Chen Daoming shook his head. The expectation he had just had for Ye Chen dissipated in an instant. He's like telling the audience directly what's going to happen next. In this way, the audience will always be concerned about this matter, and the viewing experience will become very bad. And with such a long timeline of over 30 years, it's impossible for the camera to flash and say that 30 years have passed, right? Is it a young person who lacks experience and just praises him for being foolish and eager to show off their skills? I heard 3 people criticizing Ye Chen one after another. Old strategist remained silent, but the slightly raised corners of his mouth revealed his thoughts. Then, just as old strategist was brewing something in his mind, he turned his head and wanted to say something to the backstage director. Suddenly, a group of 100 judges exclaimed in unison, causing old strategist to quickly turn back and look at the screen. I saw that after the comment subtitle of the spoiler in the picture disappeared. As the camera turned, the cockpit of a heavy fighter jet suddenly appeared. And the following 4 rapid screen changes will also reveal the details inside the cockpit at a glance. Seeing this, those in the judging panel who didn't understand fighter jets only understood that it was a very cool-looking fighter jet. But the big shots of Northern industry opened their eyes wide and took a deep breath. Is this the 5th generation J-20 fighter jet? Did it leak? In an instant, the big shot's hand touched his pocket, and even had the idea of calling someone to interrupt the game and directly grab Ye Chen. You should know that although J-20 has been around for a long time, the whole world knows that Dragon Kingdom has this big treasure, and there are also a lot of related pictures online. But the details inside the cockpit, which are extremely confidential, have never been disclosed by the military. Especially in the few seconds that just flashed by, the layout of various buttons was exceptionally realistic. Especially the wear and tear marks on some commonly used buttons, which only experts can understand. Otherwise in typical movies, the fighter jet would wish it were brand new and shiny. There won't be any wear and tear details. If it weren't for sitting here on the spot and only looking at the footage, I would have thought this was a military propaganda video. However, the next second. Seeing the camera overhead, rotate the downward loop lens to showcase the entire structure of the fighter jet, especially when looking at the aircraft model. The military tycoon was momentarily stunned, then took a deep breath, and then burst into laughter, pointing to the screen and shouting loudly. Double-seat J-20C, short-range vertical lift 6th-generation aircraft. This kid really dares to think. He gave me a damn shock, thinking something was wrong. Under the emotional excitement, the big shot's loud shouting attracted dissatisfaction from others. But at first glance, considering that this person is an absolutely unworthy existence, others can only secretly harbor their grievances. However, seeing this kind of tycoon who has been immersed in the military industry for a lifetime reacts like this. Others also looked up to Ye Chen once again, at least he did consider this detail well. And then, upon seeing the fighter jet in the picture spewing out a violent tail flame, slowly rising from the ground, the judges present only discovered that Ye Chen, who was immersed in the performance state, had stood in front of the sound equipment at some point. Upon seeing this, the director is backstage. Being keenly aware of what Ye Chen might need to do, the director slowly pushed the studio camera and enlarged Ye Chen's posture to allow the audience to see more carefully. Anyway, the Earth will be gone in 100 years. 300 years, the solar system is gone. At most, that's it. What else can we do? In the film and television footage, Zhang Peng and Lu Peiqiang are piloting a fighter jet and slowly taking off, waiting for the fighter jet's thrust to increase enough to move forward. As the fighter jet accelerated forward, it flew towards the sunset direction. The judges saw that Ye Chen, who was still performing, turned on the sound effects and lightly placed his hands on the buttons, ready to play background music at any time. Meanwhile, Ye Chen did not stop reciting his lines orally. Peiqiang, as soon as you go up, you will stay for about 10 to 20 years. Have you made up your mind? Zhang Peng asked. That's great, the whole family is in the sky. Anyway. Lu Peiqiang glanced at the sky and said indifferently. The Earth is not beautiful at all. It's nice to be alive, you silly child. Let me tell you. Zhang Peng didn't finish speaking when suddenly. As soon as the screen flashed, I saw Lu Peiqiang, who seemed a bit impatient, pushing the accelerator, causing the fighter jet to explode at a faster speed with a loud bang. Moreover, in order to demonstrate the supersonic flight posture of the fighter jet, Ye Chen also used a scene of reverse thrust and frontal collision, making the fighter jet appear more impactful. At the same time, accompanied by the scene, the audience gradually heard bursts of sonic boom, buzzing, and pounding drums. Vaguely, under the increasing sound of heavy drums and the visuals, everyone present was emotionally aroused by this scene. Hey, steady, steady. Startled by the sudden acceleration, Zhang Peng exclaimed to let Lu Peiqiang drive slower. Next up. As the fighter jet skimmed over the sea at low altitude, it rose to a high angle and soared into the clouds. Under the sunset, behind the clouds. Vaguely, the audience seemed to see a towering and massive mountain standing behind the clouds. Bang bang. Seems completely immersed in it, on the studio side. At this moment, Ye Chen completely let go of his hands and feet, raised his hands high and then fell heavily, vigorously tapping on the sound effect device. As if playing a giant drum, pounding the heartstrings of the audience with the constantly exploding rhythm of heavy drums. In 2 seconds. As the fighter jet pierced through layers of clouds, I listened to the heavy drums constantly playing in my ears. The audience, who had already been emotionally aroused, suddenly saw a huge mountain peak made of steel. Mountain moving plan, planetary engine experiment machine number 1. See the subtitles annotated in Chinese on the screen. On the judging panel, Shuping, who had been staring at the screen all along, finally couldn't bear it anymore and slammed the table with a heavy hammer. Bully. Chapter 6. Is this Nema compiled now? You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 6. Is this Nema compiled now? Bully. As a judge and teacher, Xu Ping shouted loudly. For a moment, the viewers watching the live broadcast online were completely ignited, and the barrage-like mountains and seas of bullets instantly went crazy in ticket sales. My mom, it's truly the finals. This is a big move. Nyo Pai, this fighter jet has flown directly into my heart. Please tell me that there will be air combat scenes in the future, please. Planetary engine. Is it so futuristic? How high is that thing? I see it has already broken through the clouds, so it's over 10,000 meters. Can it be made? I didn't understand. What is the solar crisis? Old strategist once said that he didn't understand the combination of sound and painting, and even criticized him, but he ended up providing you with live music. You can't beat him up. Is this the value of the top 10 in the country? As a new screenwriter, I see a gap in strength. I hate it. Why didn't I go to the scene? Watching it on a big screen would definitely be even more stunning. In the background, I saw the live streaming data skyrocketing at this moment. The chief director and other assistant directors took a deep breath together, and after looking at each other, their eyes were filled with shock. I thought there would be high data, but I didn't expect it to be so explosive. Technician. Hurry up and add more backup lines, I suddenly have an ominous feeling. What's the origin of Ye Chen? I used to see that his grades weren't as good as this. I poured 2 bottles of Feng Yujing on the spot and it turned into a cow's skin like this. How about I also have a bottle? Can that thing be drunk directly? Whispering incessantly, the director took a cigarette from his pocket and, disregarding the studio's smoking ban, lit one and took a deep breath before calming down and saying, "This program will definitely exceed the leader's expectations. They may personally call to inquire and make everyone more alert, don't drop the chain. Camera assistant. Add more cameras and capture all Ye Chen's movements for me. In the future, I will point to this thing and attract a lot of traffic. After finishing, please have a drink. Understood. On site. Seeing Ye Chen presenting the mountain-like steel building in the picture. The judges were not in a hurry to make an evaluation, and they guessed that there should be another plot to explain this spectacle. Sure enough, after spending a full 3 seconds showcasing the magnificent appearance of the planetary engine. As soon as the camera turned, everyone present saw the fighter jet, which was originally over 20 meters long. As it passed by the engine, it turned out to be as small as an ant on a giant elephant. In such an impactful contrast, many professional screenwriters present exclaimed, sincerely impressed by Ye Chen's visual imagination. And what makes the scalp tingle the most is, Ye Chen never forgot to play music synchronously from beginning to end. The continuous sound of the buzzing phoenix chime in the ears once again makes the audience feel the grandeur of this huge steel mountain peak in front of them. Next second, the camera zooms in. From the perspective of the rapidly flying fighter jet, Liu Peiqiang and Zhang Peng looked at the engine standing on the ground, saying, "Did you see it? This is the first experimental machine of the mountain moving plan, and we will have it capped in less than 6 months. Half a year." Liu Peiqiang observed the engine and asked, "Is there enough time?" Zhang Peng smiled proudly, "I'll tell you. We can build engines on the moon in our home, not even humans, fully automatic." That clattering sound is getting faster. During the conversation between the two, as the fighter jet circled around, the camera constantly shifted to reveal some detailed scenes inside the planetary engine. The workers are manipulating the machines, talking in various dialects, and working busily and effectively with welding machines in their hands. And what makes the audience feel grounded the most is, in such a SCI.FI grand building, there are actually Chinese construction slogans that are very in line with the taste of Chinese people, such as, "Safe construction, every second counts." Subsequently, the scene continued, waiting for the fighter jet to quickly circle the mountaintop. Zhang Peng sighed and said to Liu Peiqiang, "Anyway, as long as no one causes any damage. Half a year is worth it." Next, the next scene. When the fighter jet lowers its altitude and flies towards a runway at a distant Air Force base. As the camera rotates, at an upward angle, a 1130 close-range gun equipped with an automatic defense system is displayed on the ground in the picture. As the fighter jet flew over the airspace, the close-range gun also sensitively adjusted the muzzle angle to lock in the fighter jet. Meanwhile, someone reported in calm and steady English. Please note that aircraft ATC-10171 has entered the Air Defense Inner Ring D2 area, please confirm. Immediately, another female voice replied. Enemy or foe identification passed, lift the alert. The next second, as the fighter jet flew into the distance, the screen suddenly turned black. The previously grand and passionate background music also took a sharp turn at this moment, transforming into a cold tone with a hint of chill. Meanwhile, Ye Chen slowly said. The sun, rapidly aging. Continuously expanding, in 100 years, the sun will expand to engulf the entire Earth. 300 years later, the solar system will no longer exist. As Ye Chen narrated, the screen lit up again. But what was presented to everyone this time were catastrophic scenes such as collective animal deaths, forest fires, and glacier melting. This left the audience, who had just been aroused with excitement, stunned and frowned. To cope with the solar crisis in a century, the coalition government has been declared established. Dozens of crisis response plans have been proposed. To ensure more people survive, the mountain relocation plan was ultimately chosen. Plan to build 10,000 planetary engines to drive the Earth out of the solar system. At the same time, 3 satellite engines will be built to exile the Moon, ensuring that the Earth can break free from the Moon's attraction and set sail smoothly. As Ye Chen explained the plot, the screen continued to play, displaying some linear 3D model images in front of everyone. At this point, the audience truly understood what the mountain peak they had just seen was for. Especially when it was heard that more than 10,000 planetary engines were to be built, there were even people on the judging panel shouting, lying down. I'll go, is this setting so big to play with? Is it possible to install an engine on Earth and fly out of the solar system like a spaceship? Is this Nema's picture made up based on the proposition? Did it go viral? Didn't it really be prepared in advance? Nyobi, I'm on my knees. It's his mother out of line, brothers. Exile the Moon. Does that mean Earth, you scumbag, you're kicking me? The picture is very realistic, the news network has been adjusted, and the Yankee CNN also has it. It feels like a documentary. How much material do we need to gather to create this kind of scene? Note, this is just the opening scene. The real opening scene of the first act has not yet come out. I think the 4 teachers are thinking. What the fuck can I teach him? I see the towering ship with a strong heart and eyes, like a dragon galloping down the 3 Shu Mountains. This scene can only be rendered with special effects using a brain machine, right? Who could come up with such a live-action prop? Looking at the footage, especially after seeing the live interview records of the completion of News 13 on the lunar surface, the backstage director felt quite shocked for a moment. In a daze, he even doubted whether this was true news. The blue background title and the brief scrolling below made him wonder if he was from CCTV. He didn't hear of this news until the cigarette he was holding between his fingertips burned to his fingertips. The director finally snapped out of his cool breath with a hiss, shook off his cigarette butt, and with a sudden jolt, turned his head to shout at the deputy director. Go and advertise for me all over the world now. I tell you, today's final is about to produce a true domestic champion. Work. After shouting, the director immediately got up and left the director's office, as if he was going to call some leader. On site here. The scene continued, and Ye Chen's tone of explaining the narration became increasingly serious. However, with the implementation of the mountain relocation plan, the difficulty and high cost of implementation exacerbate the impact on global interests. Questioning, opposition, conflict, escalating day by day. The original crisis response plan has become the crisis itself. The feasibility verification of the mountain relocation plan is urgent. Accompanied by the scenes of war and conflict in the picture, Ye Chen finished his last voiceover word by word and quietly sat back on the sofa, slowly removing the VR brain computer from his head. Suddenly, on the main stage of the hall, the film and television footage disappeared, leaving only one live broadcast shot from Studio 10. After a full 5-second silence. Okay. The judges present, who were still reminiscing about the plot just now, were suddenly startled by the sudden burst of their voices. Turning his head towards the direction of the sound, he saw Teacher Shuping standing up directly from his chair, excitedly clapping and applauding. Waiting for another 3 seconds of silence to pass. Everyone present applauded and praised together, and for a moment, the intense applause erupted from the scene, which seemed a bit harsh. On Ye Chen's side, he didn't react much when he heard the audience applaud, whistle, and cheer. Just a simple response from the camera in front of him, he let out a sigh of relief, and his neck twisted limply, turning his head and falling asleep on the sofa. Take a break, give me 5 minutes. I'm too tired, using my brain to directly conceive a movie is really. Ted is so tired. The success of a new book depends on the first day's grades. Requesting support from readers. Begging for flowers and tickets. Chapter 7. Sleeping in CCTV Live, How Dare He? You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 7. Sleeping in CCTV Live, How Dare He? After hearing Ye Chen shout tired, he turned his head and collapsed on the sofa to sleep. In the backstage of the director's office, when the chief director went out to make a phone call, the deputy director's face turned green as he watched the live broadcast channel. No, wait a moment. Millions of people were staring at him, and he fell asleep. During the peak period of CCTV Line 1, the prime time for advertising costs of millions of dollars per second, many actors' lifelong pursuit of the opportunity to appear on screen. He's actually sleeping. How dare he dare? Shocked, the assistant director realized that the situation was not good, and a thin sweat welled up in his palms. The hand holding the lens switch also twitched, unsure if it was time to cut the frame. After all, there may be big leaders watching now, which is almost equivalent to a live broadcast accident. On the live channel side. As soon as the good play started and the audience had just roughly understood the plot, they saw that this guy was actually shaking his head and going to sleep. For a moment, the barrage was filled with question marks. Ye Chen is tired. His mother, he's dead. I don't understand why I'm so tired. CCTV dares to live stream and sleep in this place. This guy's psychological resilience is also too strong. To explain to those who are not familiar with the industry, using a brain computer to conceive is extremely physically and mentally demanding. Think about the feeling when your mind is on the verge of falling asleep, and even thinking can be very difficult. Besides, just now Ye Chen was both performing synchronously and conceptualizing the visuals, and was busy playing music under his hands. Being able to persist for more than 10 minutes in one breath in this state of overclocking is already very impressive, okay. In the semi-finals, he takes an average of 3 minutes rest, and he is already very strong. It's not surprising that a person did what a crew should have done, and he just burned his brain. It's time to rest. Champion, I'm pushing my girlfriend up, I bet this guy will definitely be the champion. You can tell from the judges' sarcastic expressions on their faces. Judges' seat. All 4 teachers are experts in using brain computers frequently, so they naturally know about the phenomenon of brain-computer overclocking. So they understood very well why Ye Chen suddenly felt tired and wanted to sleep. According to the rules, this final is not something that can be completed in minutes, and players already have the right to rest. According to the process, when the contestant is resting, the guide should cut off the camera and take the opportunity to play some advertisements or cut to other contestants. However, Due to Ye Chen's 10-minute screen time just now, everyone was immersed in it, so I really watched the movie seriously. So at this moment, Ye Chen's sleep makes everyone feel abrupt. On the host's side, Xiao Sa and Bing Bing, who were standing on the side of the stage, stared at Ye Chen, who was sleeping in a daze. It wasn't until they heard the assistant director's tearing shout in their headphones that they realized it. They went on stage to remedy the situation and said, Contestant number 10 Ye Chen's performance just now was very impressive. Please have 4 teachers give feedback. Throw out the words and make wild-eyed gestures. The judges reacted quickly, and Xu Ping, who was still emotional, immediately picked up the microphone and spoke loudly. I just want to say, we should give him a team, we should give him a professional team. Perfect, all aspects of the opening of the scene just now were very perfect. The fighter jet quickly swept over the sea, then headed straight into the clouds, finally breaking through the clouds, focusing the focus of the scene on the planetary engine. The switching of these splitters and the layout of light and shadow are basically impeccable, and it is already a technology at the level of finished movies. At the same time, we saw and heard that contestant Ye Chen also added some emotional enhancing sound effects for it. The two are parallel, and Ye Chen achieved an excellent combination of painting and sound. When praising generously, when it comes to sound effects, Xu Ping even glanced at the old strategist next to him, intentionally or unintentionally. You're still finding fault for saying that the child doesn't know how to score. Now, as a player, he's using his strength to knock down your judges on the ground, and I'll embarrass you. In short, Xu Ping shook his head in admiration and said. To be honest, if I had known he had such visual expression ability earlier, I probably would have invested directly in him to make the movie go live. Based on the current development of this story, I am looking forward to his future performance. After speaking, Xu Ping took a satisfying breath and handed the power of speech to Chen Daoming. Taking the microphone, Chen Daoming looked up at Ye Chen, who was sleeping heavily on the screen with great interest, and pointed at him, saying, Otherwise, give Ye Chen a blanket or something first. After all, he has more important tasks ahead, don't give the young man a cold. A mischievous remark livened up the atmosphere, and Chen Daoming said solemnly. The place to praise has already been praised by Teacher Ping. And I think the interesting part of that scene just now was the details. Just now, while explaining the solar crisis in the narration, a few seconds of footage of a military base flashed by. In the picture, I saw some very high-tech robots that can walk on both feet, similar to door frames. I was surprised that someone hung clothes on that high-tech platform. It seems like they even posted a pair of couplets. From this perspective, contestant Ye Chen not only pays attention to details, but also has a lot of life experience. This is something that only real people can come up with. It's great to be so down-to-earth in a science fiction framework. In short, it's very outstanding. After speaking, Chen Daoming nodded and gave a thumbs-up gesture. And Chenglong pondered for a few seconds and smiled, saying, My evaluation is simple. I hope to see this movie released globally someday in the future, that's it. The high praise and evaluation of these 3 people fell into the ears of old strategist, and for a while, even Zhang Yimou from the old martial arts world couldn't hold his face. How could a college freshman who is just one of the top 10 contestants in the country and has never even run for a serious film crew have such strong creative ability? If it weren't for being a judge, knowing that there wouldn't be cheating by skipping questions in advance. He is afraid that not everyone will turn around and curse on the spot. Especially when I thought about my own evaluation of the combination of sound and painting just now, Lao Gizi's face became even more ugly, and his originally thin face looked even darker. I agree with the 3 teachers' statement. They have already praised me, and I don't have much to say. I hope Ye Chen will perform well in the future. The hasty ending of a chat. On the side of the 100-member judging panel, some professionals who were familiar with the art lowered their heads and chuckled inwardly. But at this moment, more people's hearts are churning with excitement. Disaster-themed hard science fiction. This type of blockbuster that relies solely on special effects to provide visual effects has always been a weakness of Chinese cinema. When it comes to science fiction, most people immediately think of the three words Hollywood, which have formed a cultural invasion. After all, they do have the ability on their end, and science fiction special effects have also formed a professional industry line. Although in terms of technical strength, the Huaxia special effects team has been striving to catch up in recent years and can also receive production tasks for some well-known foreign blockbusters. But after all, we are not as good as others in terms of overall experience, which must be admitted. Especially in the past 2 years, a science fiction film called Fortress on the Sea, that was advertised all over the world was heavily marketed before its release. The directors and actors interacted with each other on Weibo all day long, causing the whole world to think that this product was so confident that there must be something real. Some even directly say that this will be a heavy hammer that will open the door of Chinese science fiction. What is the result? The heavy hammer did indeed fall, but it all fell on the audience's heads. It's all smashed into sauce for the audience. From then on, whenever there is a mention of a sci-fi blockbuster, Chinese audiences instinctively reject it, and their first reaction is definitely to think that this thing is trash. Until just now. Just those 10-minute opening remarks made many people present in front of them. If in the future, Ye Chen can still maintain this level and tell the story completely, even if the plot is a bit cliché. In the future, Ye Chen will definitely receive invitations from Tianliang's science fiction films, and perhaps he can truly open a door for Chinese science fiction films. Similarly, the big shots in charge of commercial investment projects are also feeling turbulent at this moment. Fighter planes and weapons props, there's no need to think that they will definitely be taken away by the big shots of the northern military industry. Judging from his performance of standing up and applauding just now, the big shots really like this kid. And other props, sunglasses, headphones, and other small items in the drama must also have advertisers eyeing him and preparing to give him money. It can be expected that player number 10, Ye Chen, as long as he doesn't drop the chain and writes a movie that suits the taste of Chinese people, he doesn't play any pro-European and American political correctness bullshit. So at least in China, even if he doesn't win the championship in the end, he will become famous in one battle. This movie will definitely receive crazy money from investors and eventually be shot and released nationwide. Just the judges were whispering and their gaze towards the main screen became increasingly complex. So you should get up and work, brother. Just now, I lifted someone's appetite and turned around to go to sleep. What's the difference between this and a scumbag who just lifts his pants and doesn't even give comfort? A bunch of powerful and influential people are waiting to give you money, but you're actually sleeping on horseback. Is this suitable? The success of a new book depends on the first day's grades. Requesting support from readers. Seeking flowers, tickets, comments. Chapter 8. This is directly because the ancestral tomb caught fire. You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 8. This is directly because the ancestral tomb caught fire. On the side of the judging panel. I don't know how many people are now harboring resentment and jealousy towards Ye Chen. Especially watching him fall asleep at such a deadly moment. Some people want to rush into the studio and strangle this bastard. So loving to sleep, why not just take a long sleep? On the other end, the director's department. I originally wanted to go out and call the leader to apply for more directors to invest in advertising. Just as I took out my phone, I saw the deputy director of CCTV's main station calling directly. Startled in his heart, he thought something was wrong, and the director trembling answered the phone call of this great leader. Leadership. What are you doing? As soon as the call was connected and there was no time to greet, the director frowned and took his phone away. The leader on the other end of the phone cursed loudly. Quickly wake up the player surnamed Ye and let him continue working no matter what. Someone has come up and requested to participate in the program by name. I have someone send you an email for the detailed briefing. Please read it carefully, take it seriously, and be diligent and quick. Where can a well-behaved young person sleep? How can he sleep at this age? After cursing, the leader slammed onto the phone, leaving the director to swallow his saliva and hastily open the email sent by the leader. Immediately, with just one glance, the director exclaimed in shock, lying down. Notice on the participation of the Science and Film Integration Special Committee, in order to promote communication and integration between science and the film and television industry, as well as to promote scientific and cultural popularization work, it is hereby formulated. After hastily reading the document, the director leaned back against the door frame, took out a cigarette from his pocket, and lit it 3 times before lighting it. This file roughly means that after watching the 10-minute opening and prologue plot, the leader was very interested in it. Originally, there were some ideas at the leadership level to promote the Chinese scientific film and television culture. After all, in recent years, the invasion of Western culture in Hollywood has become increasingly severe, and various American values have been messed up, making the new generation of young people unable to learn well. And in order to contain this in a timely manner, the leader plans to establish a consulting team led by professional scientists to participate in the production of film and television culture. In other words, it is. In the future, hard science fiction films produced by Huaxia will need to collaborate with scientific advisory teams as much as possible. And Ye Chen, that kid, was so lucky that he bumped into this wind that could completely change his life against the sky. That means, as long as Ye Chen can play steadily in the future, don't come up with any tricks. So he can leave a good impression on the senior leadership. Take a look at the long list of names for the scientific team drawn up below the document. The director unconsciously wiped away some sweat. Professor, military advisor, bachelor's degree, PhD in communication engineering, Institute of Technology, Chinese Academy of Sciences. Any one of them is a reliable and high-quality human. And they will fully cooperate with Ye Chen to record this program, striving to produce good results that can satisfy the leaders on their first job. If it is achieved, it is not a problem for Ye Chen to directly retrieve a staffing on site. My mother. Ye Chen, you're not smoking from your ancestral tomb. You, his mother, are directly touching your ancestral grave. Taking a fierce puff of smoke, the director felt a lot of pressure and hurriedly extinguished the cigarette butt on the wall, burning his butt and running towards the recording site. On site. Until the deputy director trembled and cut off the scene of Ye Chen sleeping. All the talents came to their senses and regained the relaxed mood of watching variety shows normally. But then, the director department found that there seemed to be another His Mother live broadcast accident. Previously, because almost everyone was staring at Ye Chen, he used his own strength to directly increase the intensity of this program. So the other 9 contestants, until now, have not written anything valuable on their hands. Not to mention the finished footage, I haven't even written a plot outline that can make the 4 judges blush and praise it. Number 10 is just like that, and unless others write something better than him, this competition won't be able to take place at all. For a moment, I watched the 9 contestants frantically pretending to work hard. The host Xiao Sa didn't know what to say, so he could only pick a contestant to talk to and drag on time. On the side of the judging panel, I didn't see anything worth seeing on the main channel. A considerable number of professionals continued to focus their attention on Ye Chen. It can be foreseen that no matter who the ultimate champion is, Ye Chen's film related to the Sun crisis will definitely be shot in real time. In order to seize investment opportunities, advertising investors who came with tasks have already begun to draft plans. The real.life items that appeared in the video earlier, such as sunglasses and clothing, have long been divided up by relevant advertisers. Especially the door frame robot used by people to hang clothes, after Chen Daoming praised it so much, someone immediately started designing toy concept maps on site holding a computer. Even the dark-style food like the fried mosquito cake mentioned by Zhang Peng is ready to be launched by catering companies. Finally, there was a group of investors who had not yet secured a spot, all holding their phones tightly and staring at Ye Chen's side with fierce eyes. As long as he can still come up with some novel and fresh gadgets in the picture. So there must be someone rushing to give him money, buy the copyright, and then launch the same peripheral. Not long. Just as Xiao Sa was running 3 studios with his camera, he didn't notice any interesting footage. The good news finally came from the director's office, and the director gasped for breath. Ye Chen woke up. Damn it, I poured 5 whole bottles of essential oils onto a towel and rushed into the room to cover his face. Now I'm wiping my face, my whole body is transparent, and I'll be able to enter the state immediately. The host casually said a few words, followed by a 2-minute advertisement, and then the screen was directly connected to Ye Chen. Prepare. Upon hearing the instructions, Xiao Sa finally breathed a sigh of relief as he racked his brains to find topics with the contestants. He hurriedly left Studio 7 and headed straight to Ye Chen with his camera. Later, as soon as I entered the door, I saw Ye Chen's face, which seemed to turn a bit green after being awakened by the wind oil essence. The deputy director was standing beside him, waiting for him to wipe his face, as if he was almost kneeling down. Upon seeing this, Xiao Sa smirked and looked at the whiteboard on the side of the studio, asking. Space elevator. I seem to have seen a related concept image in the picture just now. But those are all 3D sketches, I can't figure out how the picture should be captured in one shot. Can we say that the highlight of this scene revolves around the space elevator? Upon hearing this, Ye Chen, who was wiping his eyelids with a towel, glanced at him and shook his head, saying. Where are we now? Tell everyone, my whole job can make everyone wet into a river. == New book on the road, seeking flowers and comments. Kneel down, oars, to all the readers. Chapter 9. International Wolf Warriors. You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 9. International Wolf Warriors. Wet into a river. Upon hearing Ye Chen's words, the deputy director didn't react for a moment. The old driver Xiao Sa immediately spat out with a hiss and quickly said to the camera behind him. Don't broadcast this segment after it's cut out. Even for entertainment-oriented variety shows, you absolutely can't say such things on CCTV channel. Big leaders can watch the show. However, Xiao Sa suddenly turned his head to Ye Chen and said sternly, I understand what you mean. 1-minute preparation, looking forward to your performance. Later. When Xiao Sa and the assistant director leave the studio, the director will immediately connect the signal upon receiving the message. With a swoop, at the competition venue, the board judges suddenly saw the energetic Ye Chen reappear on the main screen. Immediately, the scene fell silent for 2 seconds. Subsequently, Chen Daoming took the lead in applauding, and a group of judges behind him burst into enthusiastic applause. See the situation, from other studios. Some of the players who have just started to enter the state have expressions of sadness and joy on their faces. The good news is that the audience's attention is all on Ye Chen's side, and if no one is watching, they can stabilize their mentality and focus on creating. Sadly, the audience's attention is all in Ye Chen's side. Why don't we just let him carry the cauldron alone in this competition? In a few seconds, Ye Chen took a deep breath and put on his VR brain again, then stood in front of the sound effects device. I saw that he was still preparing to create in the overclocking mode of sound and picture synchronization. The jury couldn't help but marvel at it. This high-intensity creative mode is considered strong by most people who can play for a few minutes at the most critical moment of the plot. Ye Chen, be ready to play in a dragon from start to finish. With this seemingly effortless demeanor, let alone the champion, he should at least be given the Best Special Effort award. Just as I was thinking about it, I saw a picture suddenly appear on the originally pitch-black screen. A large proportion of the words, 2044, appeared before my eyes. Immediately after, the camera zoomed in from afar, showcasing the entire picture of New US City in a cool gray-yellow tone, accompanied by the sound of some alarm bells ringing loudly. Below the UEG coalition government headquarters building, smoke-shrouded, and countless protesters holding up signs gathered here. The military and police are holding riot shields and desperately blocking, but protesters are constantly throwing extremely dangerous combustion bottles and explosives towards the building. Seeing this scene, old strategist let out a cold breath. The coalition government, New US City, the territory of the Magnolians. Is it difficult? In the future, the protagonist played by Wu Jing will collaborate with magnesium agents to recreate a League of Nations version of Wolf Warrior. If that's the case, the plot would be cliché AD. The settings for planetary engines and the like just now were wasted. Such a plot is no different from ordinary spy action movies. Why bother with any sci-fi background? He intentionally or unintentionally added a rhythm. For a moment, the audience without much thinking ability also joined in, and some sand sculptures of Wolf Warrior PTSD seemed to have found a breakthrough, issuing barrage of questioning. Zhang Yimou is right. I was not satisfied with choosing Wu Jing as the lead actor. Can the Wolf Warrior culture go to hell? The first 10 minutes are a bit interesting, and as expected, we will return to the clichés in the future. Ye Chen is just one of the top 10 in the country, he can only be tough for 10 minutes haha. Is that it? I only came to see it after hearing you guys boast so much. I didn't expect it to be here. It's better to sell the sci-fi settings than to create such a plot, at least you can get some copyright fees. What's wrong with the director? He bribed him to only film him, right? Other contestants can also give a picture. For a moment, I saw various troublemaking barrages sent by online viewers. The other 3 judges gave a slightly dissatisfied glance at the innocent old strategist on his face. Cheng Long even took a bottle of sponsored mineral water and put it in front of Lao Gizi, gesturing with a smile, saying, "Can drinking water stop your mouth?" Seeing the plan succeed, old strategist smiled and took a sip of water, ready to see how Ye Chen unfolded the plot. If he really does what he said about creating an international war wolf, then he will be scolded to death by the audience in the picture. Showcased the intense scene of protests outside the government building. The camera flashed inside the building. More than 100 government officials with different clothing and skin colors were busy at the moment, and the conference hall was crowded with people, many of whom were whispering in different languages. The government buildings have all been attacked. It must be the Digital Life faction who are leading the way in causing trouble. Digital Life plans should not have been banned in the first place. Whether it's feasible or not, the voices of the opponents are growing louder, and we are under too much pressure. As the camera moves slowly, a young woman wearing a ponytail, a suit, and a national emblem pinned to her chest appeared in front of the camera. Her face was anxious, and after listening to a phone call, she stumbled through the crowd and ran towards the internal conference room. Isn't this Zhu Yan Manzi? She's quite beautiful, a new generation actress. How did she use her? Working in the United Nations building. Is that definitely our assistant to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China? It's a bit like a young spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it's still a bit immature and rough. Hao Xiaoxi, this name is good news, isn't it? It's really a movie made for us Chinese people to watch, and we can understand this pun. The audience whispered as they watched Hao Xiaoxi stop at the entrance of an internal conference room and wave to the people inside. The next second, another bilingual annotation in Chinese and English appeared on the screen. 10 months left until the first ignition, see you again, early spoilers. Seeing this, old strategist, who was still questioning the plot, suddenly grinned. Oh. I guess, due to the rebels' uprising, the planetary engine was eager to ignite and start again. So the coalition government was in a hurry and had no other choice, so they sent elite agents to cooperate with us and destroy the rebels' conspiracy in one fell swoop. What kind of digital life faction? And the final battle will definitely be near that space elevator or engine. Don't tell me this is really the plot, it's just too vulgar. This kind of routine is almost done up in Hollywood. Young people are still inexperienced, but considering they're on .site creations, it is understandable. It's just average. This time, I heard old strategists secretly poking with rhythm. The other three judges, who couldn't imagine the development of the plot for a moment, didn't say anything, just frowned slightly as they watched the scene. Even teacher Shuping, who has always supported Ye Chen, felt a murmur in his heart. In the previous prologue, he was very dissatisfied with the fact that there were still 34 years left for the Sun Helium Flash spoilers, and he had criticized them all. Why not have a long memory? Now that the plot is almost figured out by someone, what else do you have to praise next? At this moment, everyone was speculating about the plot. Just looking at the picture, in the internal conference room, an elderly person with an old face but still maintaining his spirit slowly turned his head. Seeing the old man's face, for a moment, the judges present opened their mouths in surprise and whispered, "Oh my goodness! Is this show? Like, so much like." In an instant, everyone was stunned. Chapter 10. At a glance at you, I know what our child's name is. You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 10. At a glance at you, I know what our child's name is, it's just so much like him. Looking at the appearance of the actor in the picture, the judges all took a deep breath. Teacher Li Shuajian, he's almost 70 years old this year. Moreover, his elderly family has also undergone surgery for nasopharyngeal carcinoma, making it even more difficult for him to speak as he gets older. What does Ye Chen think? If the movie really needs to be filmed, it's impossible to invite the elderly over, right? However, judging from the teacher's appearance, this steady Zhongshan suit and aura really resemble him. The romance of Chinese people, such character metaphors, can only be understood by us Chinese people. For a moment, when they saw Li Shuajian dressed in Zhongshan suit in the picture, everyone's reactions were different. Xu Ping and Chen Daoming were even more unhappy about this. If we really follow the old plan, Ye Chen's plot is just a Hollywood-style routine. The play by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs can be played by anyone, and the characters in the play should not be dressed up like this. It evokes associations and raises expectations, but the core idea is not right, which could result in Ye Chen being labeled for not being able to guarantee success. In that case, he won't say anything about being a champion. If he can continue to work in the mixed drama industry in the future, it can be considered that his ancestors have someone to protect him. Worried beyond measure, the two furrowed their brows and stared intently at the screen. However, old strategist completely relaxed his mindset and adjusted his sitting position to a more comfortable one. Anyway, the goal has been achieved. Just tap Ye Chen occasionally to let him know who is sitting in the judging panel. In the picture. As of now, there have been 17 damages to the headquarters of the coalition government. The surrounding important streets have been occupied by protesters, and the situation is not optimistic. Furthermore, in the internal conference room with the flags of the Five Good Men and UEG coalition government, the staff reporting on the situation were interrupted before they could finish speaking. A magnesium man with a white beard waved his hand and stopped. There's no need to say that. This attack on the coalition government is clearly not just a simple protest demonstration. This indicates that people have lost interest and confidence in the mountain relocation plan. The American held his hand on his chest, which was adorned with the American emblem, and looked at the crowd, saying, "So our suggestion is to temporarily postpone the implementation of the mountain relocation plan. Following democratic ideas may win the opportunity to negotiate with the protesters." Upon hearing this, listen to the Americans finish speaking. At the other end of the conference room, Li Shuajian smiled slightly and raised his hand to point out the Americans. Immediately after, the conference room quieted down, and everyone present turned their heads together, earnestly holding the translator, ready to listen to how the Chinese side was considering. "Old Mike, this suggestion is not good. The night before dawn is the hardest to endure. Our suggestion is to continue promoting construction, withstand all interference and damage, and complete ignition verification as soon as possible. Don't forget, the window period is only left for us for 13 months. The sun won't wait for us." Li Xuejian spoke at a slow pace, but his words carried an undeniable and rebuttal aura. After he finished speaking word by word, the camera advanced and annotated the 3 words, "Zhou Zhizhi," into the screen. "See this scene." The 4 judges exchanged a glance, and Xu Ping's eyebrows unconsciously raised a little. Chen Daoming couldn't help but sit up straight. Teacher Li Xuejian has undergone throat surgery, and his voice in reality is very hoarse. However, in the film, Ye Chen deliberately modified the tone to make the teacher's voice sound very normal. He handled this very well. I was worried about it earlier, but I didn't expect it to be because I underestimated Ye Chen. And what I most want to praise by name is. When the Chinese minister spoke, personnel from other countries hurriedly put on translators, and this detail was done very well. Especially. Chen Daoming commented in a slightly raised voice. The tone, wording, and tone of Zhou Zhi's speech are very consistent with the cultivation and aura that Chinese leaders should have, steady. There is no doubt about it. To achieve this, I believe Ye Chen should have read the news a lot in private, and he has done a solid job in his basic skills. Just release this section separately, and you can go to the Film and Television Academy to exchange and learn from each other. Chen Daoming boasted vigorously, but this time there was nothing to refute the old plan. After all, in this section, without discussing the plot, Zhou Zhizhi did have a certain flavor when speaking. And what surprised old strategist a little was. If we follow the Hollywood-style storyline, Magnolians should ponder over the crisis when they hear about the situation. Then he said, "We have an elite special agent who has retired and is now a car mechanic with a family and a room. The country is in crisis, and we should let him appear. Although he may die, this is for the benefit of all humanity, right?" So, as the conversation continued, the special agents from the magnesium country would appear and meet with the Chinese war wolves to discuss how to break through the situation and have a grand finale. However, Ye Chen seems to have completely bypassed this routine and surprisingly made the Chinese leadership directly reject the suggestion of the magnesium national elder. This made old strategist a bit surprised by the development of the plot, so he could only shut up and watch it unfold. Then, wait for the scene in the conference room to end. The screen flashed, revealing a massive military base before our eyes. Gabon, Africa. United Government Experimental Base. In a speeding personnel transport vehicle, Liu Peiqiang and Zhang Peng appeared again. Liu Peiqiang was very fresh in observing the scene of a flash passing outside the car. Veteran Zhang Peng sat steadily as if accustomed to it, muttering. "Xiangzi, let me tell you, the environment is too dangerous, so you should be selected well. Cannot fall in love, cannot get married, cannot have children, on." As soon as his master spoke, Liu Peiqiang asked himself not to touch his bare body. He pushed his sunglasses and smiled, saying, "Don't worry, master. I still have to represent humanity in exploring space. Anyway, the Earth is not beautiful at all." After speaking, the screen flashed and the personnel transport vehicle stopped at the entrance of the base. The 2 of them and other new recruits got off the car and saw a large number of demonstrations and protests gathered around the railing, with journalists from various countries reporting on the relevant news. That's it. To queue up at the base, you need to go through a security check first. Pulling Liu Peiqiang into the queue, Zhang Peng was about to say something more. Suddenly, with a thud, a poorly defended railing was forcefully overturned by the protesters. A large group of people holding weapons such as sticks and incendiary flasks immediately rushed in and clashed with the shield-wielding guards. These people are all civilians. They don't have guns in their hands, and we can't use them either. We can only suppress them. Hey, who is that? Use a high-pressure water gun to sizzle him. Zhang Ping seems to be accustomed to this, jumping and pointing at someone to block the protesters, while also not forgetting to protect Liu Peiqiang. At this moment, a short foreigner was seen rushing towards the gate of the base while the security guard was not paying attention, holding a lit alcohol-burning bottle. Seeing this, Liu Peiqiang was about to drop his backpack and rush over to stop him. With a swoop, a white figure flashed past his eyes. A woman with sleek short hair moved faster than him. With a quick swipe, she knocked down the protesters in just a few strokes and also stomped on the incendiary flask. This skillful martial arts move caught my eye, and I looked closely at the name on the woman's chest. Liu Peiqiang couldn't help but pull off his sunglasses and silently recited her name once. Han Duo Duo. After reading it, I watched the screen flash and only heard a joyful ding sound. A large red screen embroidered with the characters of she suddenly appeared in the picture. In the next second, it was as if Liu Peiqiang had picked up the child again. In the background sound, there is also a funny addition of upright arrow, a soprano. Seeing this montage-style scene, everyone on site burst into laughter. Master just said a minute ago, no dating, no marriage, no childbirth. Xiangzi, you didn't even hear a word. Free not to touch. Touch everything. Is this the saying that at a glance at you, I can even think of my child's name? That sound is so his mother spiritual. This sound seems to have been composed by Ye Chen himself. Look at him, he also kept his mouth open and synchronized. After a while, he looked like a tenor and laughed to death. Isn't this Chuya? Chuya. Snowflakes fluttering, the north wind is howling. Handuo's actors were well selected, and she really learned martial arts herself. Done, the plot is indeed cliché D. I guess in the end, one of these two couples will definitely die. Don't worry, Master, the earth is not at all beautiful. For a moment, the audience was amused by this sudden scene. And the anchor seemed to be very good at getting things done, specifically giving the judges a shot at this moment, and saw Wu Jing waving his hand and shaking his head wildly in the teasing eyes of everyone. Beijing refuses. Subsequently, the screen continued. As Liu Peiqiang gazed at Han Duo Duo, his gaze followed her all the way and turned his head. Just behind him, Zhang Peng, who had already seen through everything, took off his sunglasses and stared at Liu Peiqiang with a smile on his face. Is the earth beautiful?